This is the sequel to Party Player's Progress that nobody asked for, but I needed, especially when I'm trying to answer the hardest questions that I ask myself, and feel more content with who I am. I'm going to be talking about a lot of deep topics that are going to sound existential, and I'm not going to sugarcoat any of it, since you guys deserve an honest conversation, and I'm not going to treat any of you like babies or pander to you. While I have been making progress upon myself, whether it be YouTube or real life, I've always been asking myself different hard-hitting questions that left me thinking. Those questions include, what is my purpose in life? Does life have inherent meaning? What legacy do I want to leave behind? What defines my identity? How should I confront my own mortality? How do I value my life? What's it all for anyway? And what worries me the most about the future? If I had to be honest about many of these questions, I don't think there are answers. Or at least, I don't think there's just one answer, and sometimes it may be hard for me to fully put into words. Hell, when trying to think about how I feel about romantic love in real life, I'm always at an impasse. I've been struggling with coming back to YouTube for a while, especially when I have no schedule or full game plan that I'm confident will work in the long run. One of my least favorite things about YouTube is that you could bust your ass and put in as much effort as possible to make a high quality video that people will remember for how insightful or informative or entertaining it is. And yet, they'll still reward people who talk over a still image of a show or movie's poster for 10 to 35 minutes. Creating a video with a set release date is hard, because when you fall behind on a promise, you feel like you have to push and push to get it done so quickly. So you edit everything slightly half-assed to where you get a video that's informative, but it doesn't really feel strong in entertainment, never getting a laugh or an emotional, heartfelt cry. Trying to form a game plan to expand your content to something else, get across the positive vibe of trying to reach bigger audiences or reach your fullest potential. But some people who are only interested in seeing you talk about one thing, due to it being where you started or what that particular audience is interested in, and they'll leave you behind or unsubscribe as they're not fully getting whatever they want anymore. It gives me the existential question, will anyone ever really love me? I don't want anyone getting the wrong idea. I'm not asking this because I genuinely think no one loves me. But it's more because I feel like people only subscribe to the content of some guy reviewing shit, as opposed to, here's a man giving his own unique way of viewing different pieces of media, or the world itself, challenging my perspective on the things that I may like or dislike, forming a common consensus through critical thinking. Like adults should. This is one of the reasons that I'm usually frustrated at channels like Lambo Rock Strikes Back having as big a following as they do. It doesn't feel like full engagement for all parties, or they genuinely engage with the content and give you a better understanding of the material through visual representation of the point you're trying to make. After all, I may be an audio learner, but sometimes I can come to a bit of clarity about what or how I feel about media I consume by showing irrefutable footage, and a clear statement that gives me the chance to look at things differently through a second viewing with the context given. My job as a reviewer is to use objective evidence to give you all my subjective perspective. By giving you all objective evidence that's easier to comprehend, and even handing you a proper understanding of characters' motivations, character personalities, moral evaluation based on how much I dedicate myself to the craft, it's harder to argue against my points, or the only way to go against it is through your own subjectivity, which is subject to change depending on if I make a compelling argument or not in your eye. That's the legacy I want to leave behind. I want to create an environment of safety, care, love, compassion, and critical thinking, especially because I know that there are vulnerable people who are growing into themselves just like I am at the moment. These people may have disabilities that make it harder to form their own morals, values, and standings with these pieces of media that other YouTubers would take advantage of in order to boost their own egos. Or even LGBT people may be in the process of coming out and they want a place to be respected and cared for, just like a human being should, on top of younger individuals who are still developing and maturing. I also believe none of you should be spoon-fed shit like corporate zombies. I'm gonna be fair and honest with what I believe, especially because I believe good representation utilizes these important character elements, like race and sexuality, to their advantage, in order to create an intriguing story that feels real to the people watching, and working with the material that adds to the characters and story, as opposed to just pandering and capitalizing on minority groups. I've thought about what defines me for a long time, especially since that's a question that will always change in some way, because people go through different things, so they're inspired by different things, and even those things change. People, ideas, and places. The most important thing about me is that I've discovered that I'm one of those people who loves it when others feel happy, or that by making others smile, I feel joyful myself, and have that same love given back to me. It's one of the reasons that whenever I go through sad moments, like a breakup or a friendship thing going to shit, it hurts me more than expected. It hurts a lot to go through my moments where my kindness is taken advantage of for the sake of other individuals' own agendas. Especially because I always have the best intentions in mind with what I create and say and believe. This is kind of why the Dakota situation really does take a mental toll on me, or even taking on an individual like Alex, who is so egotistical about his love of trolls and other properties that as a result he makes the trolls community look bad and even sways other people away from checking out a property they may like, a community that they may fit with. My identity is defined by how I named myself in the first place. I originally made my party planner Preston name as a lovely alliteration, but as time went on, I gave the title a new meaning. Party would indicate that I can be positive in different situations, and love the idea of camaraderie and teamwork, on top of how much I value get-togethers. Planner would indicate how I scribe my thoughts and ideas that challenge the audience in regards to the media that they may like or dislike, and form an understanding of people who attend, via my sociological training. Just like how people would write scripts for their essays and videos to prevent stumbling or nervousness and anxiety, which I struggle with. And Preston is my actual name. So I have an idea for an answer there, however, I'm confident in what I have to say about an inherent meaning to life, which I say that's more complicated to answer. For example, inherent meaning indicates that it is built in or essential to the thing itself rather than being assigned or interpreted by someone. Like how a smile usually inherently means happiness, or a red traffic light usually inherently means stop. I don't think life has an inherent meaning because every person is going to think differently when asking themselves what it all means in the same fashion, that everyone else has a different reaction to a product, and even if they have a similar reaction or reasons as to why, it affects them differently. Similar to how Trolls artists feel similarly about the Trolls franchise and Broppy, and yet the art is different with each person. Or how you'll hear a person's own unique story about why they love Trolls so much. While we're on the subject of unique stories, I'm going to tell you all the story that will answer another question on my list, or at least give me some comfort on the topic. This year, I dealt with a tragic loss that made celebrating the holidays or even making videos a little harder than usual, and it was my grandfather. It was unexpected, unlike my Uncle Keith. With Uncle Keith, we knew he was going to die someday due to the cancer he was fighting, and we were just waiting for the announcement, and this made the grieving process easier. The fact that in one of my last visits with my grandmother before he passed, I was talking politics a bit since it was election year, and my grandmother was giving him his breathing machine and medication. When she came back into the room, she said that Grandpa said, "When is Preston gonna run for President of the United States?" Indicating that even though he was in pain and not in the best condition, he was still listening in, hearing my voice and having faith and love in who I am, and what I do with the raw intelligence and passion behind my common sense speaking. He was a great man, and Grandpa, and even now, I can still feel the differences. It won't ever be the same. It never is. Which is why you always have to value every bit of time you get, as you never know when it's the last. I love and miss my grandpa today. I often wondered what death would be like, especially since I've seen different depictions of death in both Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and Agatha All Along with Marvel Studios. I came across a random thread on Twitter that gave me a bit of comfort, while also allowing me to critically think about it in some way. So I'm going to give you the main context of each message posted through the thread. First, your soul floats above your body and sees your lifeless physical self, which is usually reported in near-death experiences, and a common aspect of life after you die. Second, you go through confusion and disorientation, coming to terms with the freedom that comes with death. Third, individuals that strongly believed in purgatory or hell experience a period of darkness or isolation before transitioning to the spirit realm. that hell is more of a reflection of their own inner world of shame and guilt, and the way they perceive where bad souls, quote-unquote, go rather than being a punishment. Fourth, free will still exists outside the state of consciousness, so you're able to choose to attend your own funeral or not, and you can choose to stay on Earth as long as you feel like until you go through the tunnel of light. Fifth, the tunnel of light is described as a gateway to the spirit realm, and the spirit realm is a heavenly place that is described as better in all ways, and feels more homely and more real than Earth ever felt. From there's a lot of other stuff that feels comforting, such as soul parties or celebrating with their soul families, but regardless, we are all choosing the life that we live, and these stories aren't completed, and we're all in charge of our own destiny, and shape whatever direction our lives will go. Hell, I've always said that it takes a long time to realize how truly miserable you are, and even longer to realize it doesn't have to be that way. A quote from BoJack Horseman, which I'll be reviewing later. So that takes out 2 questions. In a way, all of this takes out another question as well, as it answers how to value life as human beings. Don't put the value of life into the physical state of being alive, but by giving it value through its ability to allow for experiences. Just like another inspiration, Mr. Enter, had said, I'd rather feel at my lowest, sad, angry, and frustrated than to feel nothing. I mean, you also have to apply mindfulness, follow your passion, and apply self-care, which I really need to do more. Be self-aware, which I have to consider carefully since I can really create a positive effect and experience on others depending on my career, and how I take criticism and shame from my mistakes. Simplify my life, which isn't as easy as people think. It's easier said than done, but it is true. And so much more. I think the easiest way to put this one is to continue to evolve during our lifetime by learning and growing. Wow, I answered many questions to the best of my abilities through all this alone. And yet, there's another question that leaves me scared every time. It's what worries me the most about the future. I've always had a strong fear of the unknown, or an insecurity of feeling like every connection I make will eventually go to shit. After all, you want to be confident things are going to be alright, or that these friendships you make along the way will last. You always want to know if you're going to be okay, or that you have value to someone else, that they value so much that they dedicate one-on-one time to you, or even give you those words of affirmation. Those 2 things are my love language after all. I always find some form of hatred in myself when I think about where I'm at today and I see others that are similar in age to me, and yet they already have their partners, their homes, had children, or are having much happier lives to settle down in. When will I have that? What am I doing wrong? I often think to myself. However, I had to realize that I am a human being, and I'm figuring it out one step at a time. You're not in the wrong or a failure for taking things at your own pace, nor should you ever feel negative feelings for not being in the same place as them, and value what you already accomplish. Because if it were easy, then you wouldn't feel proud for making it through. It makes me feel like I walked through hell with a smile. But I'm still scared despite this answer. Well, I can practice relaxation techniques like breathing or mindfulness exercises, focus on what I can control right now, and remind myself that uncertainty doesn't always lead to negative outcomes, and I have the ability to adapt. It's a lesson where I know that change isn't always bad, and sometimes it should be embraced. So, now what? Well, with all of that in mind, I want to get back to doing what I do best, and embrace what has always made me happy in some way. I can't promise that I'll be happy all the time, as that's impossible for anyone to do. But I've always felt like I wanted to feel positive about things for a longer time than I usually do. I want to bring positivity back. I want my environment online to feel safe and loving again. And you're all invited to join the party.